Well, the average home price in America is close to $500,000. So, what do you need to make to be able to afford that home today? We're going to break down the numbers, talk about the common scenarios. What if you're lean on debt, but also what if you're heavier on debt? We'll tell you all that coming up. Welcome into the Smart Mortgage Show. I'm Ben George with Bill Litton, Regional President of Cross Country Mortgage. Glad to have you on the channel. If you have any questions for us, log on smartmortgageshow.com or text the word LEND to 21,000. Today, we're actually going to talk about how much you need to make in order to afford a $500,000 home. Again, it'll be different from state to state. Some of the numbers will vary a little bit, but after this video is over, you should have a decent idea of what you need to earn in order to pay for that. So, Bill, welcome in. How are you?
Hey, Ben, I'm doing good. How are you?
I'm doing well. I'm looking forward to breaking this down because I think 500,000 is a pretty common number this day and age. I mean, you go back 20 years ago, a $100,000 home would be a pretty expensive home, a pretty nice property. But I mean, the market we're in right now, it doesn't buy you quite as much of a home anymore.
You know, with increases in the past few years, it's not what it used to be. I remember, 10 years ago, we were moving to our move-up house and we were looking to spend maybe $400, and I thought that was completely insane. And 10 years later, 500's pretty average. So yeah, it's a different world, and we got to understand, what does one need to make in order to afford the average type home in the U.S.
Yeah, that's what the goal of this video will be. And we're going to start again, just the most common scenario. This is kind of the one that, I think you at Cross Country Mortgage will see the most, but then we'll talk about those that maybe have low debt versus high debt and what those numbers would look like as well. So let's first start with that common scenario, Bill.
Yeah. And in the common scenario, just keep in mind, when you talk with a lender, we're always talking about debt to income ratio. So this is at a 50% debt ratio. That's the limit. So that's the high end of what's allowed. So this is the max qualification for most loan types. And keep in mind as well that really important, the payment that comes off of this might not fit your budget. So we always want to delineate between what do you qualify for and what fits into your budget. Okay. But from purely a qualification standpoint today, we're not talking about budget. We're talking about what do you need to make to qualify. So in this scenario, to qualify for a $500,000 home, okay, and in most of these scenarios, we're going to use $100,000 down payment, which is more common in that price range, 6.5% interest rate. So if you made $150,000 a year and your debts that we count in your debt ratio, this would be car loans, credit cards, student loans, any other installment loans. Okay. So it's your mortgage plus $2,750 in monthly obligations. Okay. You would qualify for, in this, it's $498,164. That would be the purchase price of the home you would qualify for as a maximum. If you made $150 a year, $2,750 in other debts, putting $100,000 down.
And that's important to know. I know you like to stress that, it seems with $150,000 annual income, $500,000 house wouldn't be that far out of reach, right? But it's not that simple, right? I mean, it seems like you'd be able to afford a lot more than that, but the numbers, obviously, as you can see, if you're watching us on YouTube, you can kind of see those numbers laid out for you a little bit easier to understand. But that's important to kind of notice is that, hey, you just because you make a large amount of money doesn't mean it's going to apply in multiples over that 30 years to help afford a home. So pretty interesting first look at what that is.
Yeah, absolutely. And Ben, kind of moving into the second scenario, because there's a really good comparison here. So the second scenario we want to stress is if you have very little debt, okay? So credit cards, car loans, student loans, installment debt, all your non-mortgage debt that we count into your debt ratio. Remember, we don't count utilities. We don't count fuel in your car, groceries, going to the restaurant, going to the football game or a concert, whatever you do. But monthly obligations, we went from 2,750 to 1,000. That's the only thing we changed. Look at your purchasing power go up
Wow.
dramatically, right? So a lot of times when people say we've got this amount of money and we want to spend X amount, we might say, well, maybe don't put it all down, leverage by paying off some of those other debts by coming down from 2,750 to 1,000, down by 1,750. Your purchasing power went up $275,000. So 1,750 reduction in debt, $275,000 increase in purchasing power. That's pretty significant.
Yeah, it's very significant. It's great to kind of see that on paper to better understand it. For anyone though, Bill, that says, okay, look, it's great that I can now afford a $250,000 more in a home, but I still want to stick around that $500,000 price range. If you do get that debt down to that number, does that impact your payment? Does it impact your interest rate? What will it do for you positively if you still are going to spend well under that $775,000?
Yeah, I mean, the good news is if you were to let's say your debt load is at 1,000 a month for all your other unsecured non-mortgage debt, and you don't want to spend the 775, you still want to stay in your price range, which by the way, that's what we're going to recommend that you do. And we look at the budget and we look at all the important information, but it could allow you to put less down if you wanted, because right now the stock market returns are really good. And if you're in an S&P fund or you're in some kind of mutual fund or ETF, you could put less down and divert those monies into another vehicle that's going to yield more than the 6.5% interest rate on the current loan. The other thing too is you don't need to make 150, right? So if your debt obligations are only 1,000 a month, your non-mortgage, non-secured debt liabilities, then you might only need to make 100,000. So it does change those variables as well.
All right. So that's if you're leaner on debt. So let's take a look then. If you do have a little bit more of a higher monthly obligation, what is that going to look like?
Well, Ben, this is the sad one. So adding 1,000 a month in your monthly obligations, bringing it up to 3,750 a month in those unsecured non-mortgage debts. Now your purchasing power, if you're still putting 100,000 down, you're at 339. So call it 340,000. So you just shaved $160,000 off of your buying and purchasing ability due to $1,000 more a month in unsecured non-mortgage monthly payments. And in order to correct that, in our fourth scenario here, one option would be to put more money down. So if you increased your down payment to $260,000, now you get back up to that $500,000 house. But really stop and think about that for a second. So for only an increase of 1,000 a month in your monthly debts, you had to bring an extra $160,000 down. Now, again, we would say to you, well, maybe you don't bring an extra 160. Maybe if you put the 100 down that you wanted to initially, divert 50 to paying off debt, right? So now you're at 150 total versus 260. That could get you to the same place if that 50 brought your monthly obligations back down. So, the mortgage is stretched over 30 years. So to affect the payments, you have to put a whole lot more down, 160,000 in this case. But since a car loan is crammed into 5 years, paying off 10,000 in mortgage debt might save you 50 a month. Paying 10,000 in car loan debt might save you 400 a month. So the leverage is there. And that's what we're looking to do is if there's any debt ratio concerns, we're seeing how do we best structure this to get you in the best house. And also from our standpoint, the best payment, the best financial situation, and understand what are your goals. Maybe your debts are really low. You don't need to put as much down, and that money can earn you more interest in the market.
Well, good information, Bill. I hope this gives somebody that's looking at a home around $500,000 a better idea of kind of how those numbers break down. But a couple key takeaways I had: obviously, paying down debt is a huge deal. Whether or not you're buying a home, this year, or you're going to do this for the next couple of years, working on that debt number and bringing down that monthly obligation has a huge impact. But also that there are creative ways to get into the home that you want by moving those dollars into different areas, right? Whether it be paying down some debt, making it a bigger down payment, whatever that is, there's a lot of different ways to do that. And that's what you can help with, right? At Cross Country Mortgage, having a good lender will help you understand those options and hopefully help you pick out the one that's best for you long term.
Yeah. Again, it goes back to having a consultative analysis where we go over your scenario, top to bottom, front to back, sideways, upside down. We want to make sure we have all the information so that we can put together the best options for you. And sometimes, we do work with people who have very deep pockets and, they can put a lot of money down and they make a lot of money and it's very simple. And there's other considerations for those scenarios, but sometimes it can be a puzzle, and we really like putting puzzles together, believe it or not. We, if we can roll up our sleeves and figure something out to really help somebody and make a difference, that's what our team is all about.
Awesome. Well, you can get in touch with the team at Cross Country Mortgage by simply texting the word LEND to 21,000. You can get on Bill's schedule, begin talking about your options, what you can afford, and what your different, maybe some different ways that you can get into that home that you want. It all begins by texting the word LEND to 21,000. Also, subscribe to the channel as well. We appreciate your support. If you have questions, drop a comment. We'll try to maybe feature that on a future episode. But either way, thank you for watching. Hopefully this answers the question. We'll talk to you again soon. This program is for informational purposes only. Please consult a qualified professional before taking any action. Bill Litton is a loan advisor and regional president with Cross Country Mortgage, NMLS number 147060.